Hey, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the Weekly Missions Roundtable. I am your lovely host, Mike Pettengill, Director of the West Coast Hub. Let's introduce our regulars. Anthony, say hi, introduce yourself.
Hello, Anthony, Assistant Director. How are you?
Oh, so pleasing to see Anthony every week. Anthony, we are so happy to have you here, man. You just bring sunshine to the day. Allie is awesome and does so much for our West Coast ministry efforts. Allie, introduce yourself and say hey.
Hi, I'm Ali Hajadi. I'm the West Coast Admin Assistant.
Awesome. And we have on top of your lowly host for this week and our two regulars, we have a special guest who we'll introduce in a second. But Sam, say hello, buddy.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
All right. So this week, we want to talk about the Diversifi Partnership, and Sam is the coordinator for that efforts. So let me kick it over to Ali to get us started.
Yeah, again, Sam, thank you so much for taking time to join us this week. We're so blessed.
Thank you.
We would love, I'd love if you'd share a little bit about what you do with MTW. What's your role?
Sure. Oftentimes when people ask you what you do, you kind of have to think twice because it's like, what do I actually do, right? But yes, I do know what I'm supposed to be doing. It just takes a little little tangents once in a while. But
that's how I feel. That's how I feel when people ask me what Anthony does.
Oh, that's what Anthony does. And that's how Anthony feels when people ask him about what you do, right? Goes back and forth. But yeah, I coordinate the national diversity mobilization efforts within US operations. So my work is I work with our hubs, I work with our mobilizers in our hubs to cultivate a relationship with organizations and churches and also individuals in our reform spaces. I also help coordinate or help put together and help develop our RAD, Reformed and Diverse Delegates chapters. And I facilitate those meetings to help and to envision how we as MTW can move forward in terms of our engagement with diverse communities. The other things that I do, I also, let me see here. I collaborate and I also help local churches that ask for any assistance and consulting, as well as just how they want to think through missions in diverse contexts. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's what I do. Now, do I do all of that all at once? Sometimes, yes, it bleeds over. But yeah, but mostly I do help just coordinate within our US operations and how we all think through diversity.
Awesome. Let me ask you, Sam, as the token white guy in the group. Let me ask if anybody has ever been to a General Assembly in the PCA. I would call it one of the most diverse spaces in modern Christendom. Is that
you would or you wouldn't?
I would not.
Oh, you would not. Okay.
Yeah,
I misheard you there. Yes, I thought you said you would. Okay.
No. And I'm not being derogatory in any means. It just looked like a house of mirrors for me, you know. And so, what is it like? What is it like? Do you feel pushback in when you're trying to say in the PCA world or in Mission to the World, you're in the reform circles that you want to diversify, or you feel welcome? Do you feel like you have people who maybe have sympathy or empathy with what you're doing, but don't know how to take on that role themselves? Or how is it a tough hill to climb, or let me stop hemming and hawing and ask you, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think we're working on it. I've been to a lot of churches, a lot of presbyteries, as so have you both, Mike and Anthony. You've been to a lot of different spaces. And there's some places that are very, very hostile to this idea of the church is of all people from all backgrounds, right? And when I say hostile, I mean, when I say that, oh yeah, I help coordinate, engage our people of color with missions, they automatically go down a path where diversity becomes a hot topic word. And it then leads to other aspects of this that is challenging towards, it feels like an attack, but it's actually not what diversity is. It shouldn't be an attack at all, but actually it should just be a reflection of what God has called us to do, right? To bring all people from all nations, from all backgrounds, because hey, heaven's gonna look like that, whether you like it or not. And so in other spaces, they are more open, that the church, the local church wants to engage, but they just don't know where to start. Why? Because everyone around them may just look like themselves, right? And I want to make the differentiation that this is not just a white thing, right? I've been to Korean spaces where it's just Koreans, right? And so when I talk about diversity, they're like, oh no, we are a Korean church, and so we focus on Koreans, right? But when we are seeking to do missions, when we're seeking to engage with our communities, not everyone around us is going to look Asian, right? So it's that context that I engage with. And so the degree of this hostility or not, it just depends on what space you are. And I'm sure that in every region and every hub, they engage with it differently. But yes, that is kind of the breadth of how I've engaged with it.
Yeah, and I would say, I mean, Anthony and Ali and I and you as well, I could speak for our hub efforts. We've hung out in a lot of diverse spaces and churches. We've also, a vast majority of it, because of our denomination and our theological background, it happens to be Anglo spaces. And I have not heard, and I've not heard anyone who has said, no, I don't want my church to be diverse. I think what it is a lot of times is almost the opposite. I hear a lot of Anglo-centric churches that are looking to be diverse, but they just don't know how. They just do church the way they do it, and they don't think that's doing any harm to adding diversity.
Right.
So I think I fully support what you're saying, that there can be, and I don't want anyone to listen to this thing wrong, when you say there's a hostility, it's not like, it's like, you know, down with that guy. I don't think that's not what you're implying. That's not what any of us have ever heard. It's just, it's more, how do we get to where we want to go, or where we should go? Let's put it that way. How do we get to where we should go? Like you say, heaven is very different than most of our churches do.
Right.
How do we attract diverse people? And so really what you're doing is the same thing that a lot of sessions and pastors are thinking, but you're bringing some experience into it. A lot of churches say they want to be diverse. They don't know how to get there, but you're actually helping them get there, right?
Yeah. So that's part of my work, and it's not a book that has a 1, 2, 3 on it, right? Because every context is different, and so I think that ultimately is what we're trying to look at and to see. But the ultimate goal that the Lord calls us to is very clear. So we have an ultimate goal, we have a direction that we are to go. It's the getting there that needs to be kind of worked through and worked out.
So Sam,
yeah, and sorry, Anthony, one last thing. I'll kick it over to you. The heart of the Presbyterian Church in America and Reformed theology in the United States is really centered around the Deep South, and so it's not like any of us have any problem with the fact that most of our associates and brothers and sisters are Anglos from the Southeast. I like Anglos. I married one. My wife gave birth to one. I think they're pretty cool. and so none of us have that issue. It's how do we, when we come from the roots of our denomination and our theology are stemmed historically around Anglos. How do we share that with non-Anglos? It's not that we have issues or problems. It's how do we share that rich concept of mercy and grace that we all love so much with folks that don't look like me as much. So Anthony, let me kick it over to you.
No. I want to piggyback off what you said. You know, it's, a lot of sessions, pastors are asking, okay, they know diversity, good thing, biblical thing, not a secular thing. It's primarily a God thing, right? He's the God of diversity, God of all creation. The question is how to go about doing it. So Sam, you know, you're now in the lead. You're in charge of a project now called the Diversifi Partnership. What exactly is that? And how does that help the church move from, we know that this is biblical, to now how do we go about actually doing this God glorifying work? So yeah, can you let us know, talk to us a little bit about what exactly is the Diversifi Partnership?
Yeah. So the Diversifi Partnership, I think it's a little bit of a difference in terms of what question that you asked right now, meaning there is an aspect of diversity and diversifying even within the local church context with the session, with the pastor. But the Diversifi Partnership is, in addition to that, what does it look like in terms of missions, global missions? And that's where the Diversifi Partnership kind of came from. The Diversifi Partnership, or otherwise called as the Strategic Partnership Network, is recognizing that everyone has challenges when it comes to responding to the call to serve globally. Everyone does. But more specifically, we recognize that there are challenges that people of color face that is historically excluded participation. Okay. And so then the question is, how do we kind of close that gap? Because when we think about it, especially in our context in Reform communities, when we look at the people that are going through our denomination, going through MTW to the field, it has primarily been more Anglo, right? And so we're looking at what does it look like to close that gap? There are a couple of things that widens that gap. One is there is the relational capital and the connections and the relationships, right? And we mentioned that, you know, within our denomination, we're a very deep Southern culture denomination, right? And the great thing about that is there are some key relationships, very good connections, that relational capital is there, those connections are there, right? Which then ties over to funding, because through those relationships, there are funding that comes from it. The other thing is there's an access to resources other than funding that may not be as open or as accessible to people of color, such as the different trainings, such as theological education or other types of education. The other thing is the access to be able to go and visit the field, right? So like we historically, when we look at MTW missionaries and we've asked them, hey, you know, what caused you to get onto the field for long-term or short-term, right? And most of them say, we've been on a vision trip or a short-term trip before we got here. But for people of color to go on a vision trip, to go on a short-term trip, makes that gap even harder because of the cost involved with that. Now, this is not just a story that I'm saying based on, you know, people that I've talked to, but in our field in Japan, they did a survey with all their missionaries that are currently serving on the field, and over 90% of the individuals who are on the field currently have experienced a vision trip or a short-term trip, which then caused them, or a big part of them, to be on the field, right? And so that's done by a survey by the field, right? And so we're looking at that. And lastly, we're seeing how can we get these individuals, like I just said, to the field to experience and to see it. So This is the gap that we're seeking to close. And this is how the Diversifi Partnership is wanting to do that. Now, ultimately, as we close this gap will influence the local church, the sending church. It'll influence the thought process, the way that the session experiences or engages with people from diverse backgrounds, right? Because ultimately, you'll have members of the church, individuals of the church, to go to the field, but also engaging with people of color.
Yeah.
And so the Diversifi Partnership, what it's is asking from our churches is saying, hey, would you sign up, kind of like the 1%, would you sign up to be intentionally engaged with people of color?
Yeah.
Going to the field. How? You sign up, and in this sign up, you then are saying, I want to, or my church wants to, or individually as well, but my church wants to intentionally have that relationship, because around them, they may have nobody from a diverse background, right? But in this engagement, they will be able to engage with people that come through MTW, and we will be able to, connect them with these churches. Yeah. So there's that relational capital connection that we're seeking to do. The second thing is we're asking churches to give, and we're asking churches to faithfully give. Doesn't matter about the amount, but in this giving, we're looking at this as saying, would you invest? So it's basically, would you invest for a kingdom return? So what I'm saying by that is your amount that you're investing into the Diversifi Partnership, this will then help people of color get to the field to see and to experience. Just as I said before, they experience it, they confirm their calling, they come back, right? So would you invest in these individuals to go to the field, or even individuals to have access to trainings that, I know that in the West Coast Hub, you guys have different training events, right? Yeah. Would you be willing to engage with this funding? We can get people of color to engage with your trainings, right? And so doing, these individuals would then go to the field, come back, and we pray that the Lord will call them from that. And as they turn around, we're saying, hey, we want to connect you to that church. And as they go back to that church, the church then sees, this is the return of my investment that I've made 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever it may be, right? So then ultimately, we're seeing people having more access to the field, and we're closing that gap. I'll give you an example of how this practically works. You'll have an individual, let's say from downtown LA, okay? And he's or she or the unit wants to go and visit the field. And we say, okay, we want to use this Diversifi Partnership, and we want to get them to the field of, let's say, East Africa, Uganda, right? They are a Chinese couple, let's say. And so through this partnership together, we have them go to Uganda, come back, and then all of a sudden, after a couple of years or however long that period may come, they turn around and say, actually, we feel called and we really want to get to the field long term, right? But there is, let's say, First Presbyterian Church of Rapid City, Dakota, right? There is no way the Chinese guy is going to be flying to the First Presbyterian Church of Rapid City, Dakota, South Dakota, right? To either fundraise or to engage in those churches, right? But First Pres in South Dakota has already been partnering with the Diversifi Partnership. Yeah. So when the time comes, we then engage them with the churches in places where they would not, in other reasons, be able to go there, right? For any other reason. And so with this, then it causes us to then connect and bring that gap together of relational capital, of funding and resources. So we're not promising people money. What we're saying is we want to open up these relationships to send more people of color to the field if our churches are saying, hey, I look around us and we don't have any more Hispanics around us. We don't know any African Americans. There are no African Americans that live in my city, whatever it may be, right? Which I doubt, by the way. If you say that, then you're not really going down the street. You know what I mean? But I've been to churches where they'll be like, yeah, we don't have any Hispanics around us. I was like, I doubt, right? But you get what I'm saying? And so as we engage that, how do we then move this forward? So yeah, that's the Diversifi Partnership.
No, I love it, man. It allows everyone to be involved in God's work of diversity within global missions. I love it.
Yeah, we're all image bearers of Christ, and we're all trying to figure out how to promote other image bearers of Christ who just maybe look a little different than me, or different than you, or different than someone else, to get onto the mission field and serve. So Sam, let's close out with this. Let's say you're talking to the West Coast hub, and we, the West Coast, we're a little bit more diverse than most PCA and most Reformed regions, but we still have a lot of the same thing, right? We have a lot of Anglo-dominated churches, a lot of Korean-dominated churches. Let's say there's someone watching this video right now, and they are an Anglo pastor, Korean pastor, it doesn't matter what you are. And you look at your congregation and say, my congregation is not as diverse as I would like it to be. And I want to get involved in what Sam's talking about so that our congregation can be more involved in expanding diversity within what our mission, our soldiers, our army looks like. How do they contact you? What do they say? And how can they get involved in something like this?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, hey, do you know what's going on in the West Coast hub? That's the first thing I would say. Do you know what's going on in the West Coast hubs? Do you know the activities that's going on in the West Coast hub? Because ultimately what I see is, this is not a separate project, but this is a project that is or should be part of what's been going on in the West Coast hub. So I would say, hey, contact your West Coast hub, be involved in the West Coast hub and know what's going on. And through that,
and we'll tell you how to do that in a second.
There you go. It should be somewhere here, right?
Yeah.
But know that. And then in that, then through that, I know that our West Coast hub will definitely be able to connect them through this project, because ultimately there may be churches that our West Coast hub knows that they feel like, oh no, this is not for us. Or other churches like, oh no, this is for us. And so I don't want kind of like the lone pastor to just jump in on this and drag his whole church, right? Nor do I want the lone missions committee director to drag the whole church and the pastor onto this. So ultimately, I'd say, would you please contact the West Coast hub? And as you contact the West Coast hub, have a conversation with them. And when time is right, the West Coast hub will definitely invite me. I would love to.
And we all have that in common. We're thrilled to have you spend a couple of minutes with us. So like Sam said, if you want to learn how you can be involved in this labor, this effort, or if you want to be involved in missions at all, if we can have a discussion with you individually, your family, your church, your university, on how you can get more involved in missions, here's how you reach out to us. If you are watching this on Facebook, then there's a link that's going to be right above, like I was going to say, right above this video, and click that link and fill it out, and we'll be in contact with you. If you are watching this on YouTube, the link is obviously, it's below, as we all know. And we want you to contact us. You can find us on Facebook by going into Facebook and doing a search for MTW West Coast Hub. You can find us on YouTube by doing a similar search. And Allie, Anthony, and I would love to reach out and talk to you about this or any other program, just to get you and your heart more turned towards God's Great Commission. So thanks everybody for joining us for the last few minutes, and thank everybody on screen for your time. Everybody, Have a great day. Blessings.
Yeah.
Thank you.